raise awareness, and also perhaps prove something to yourself. Stoptober's about giving up your fags. Giving up drinking is Sober October. How do you go about it? This is the bit where regular listeners will know I brag about the fact that I gave up booze coming up for 2.5 years ago. Now, that's just basically me bragging because why else are you going to give up booze? You give up booze for a lot of reasons. If you're not allowed to brag about it, then what's the point? Life's improved substantially. I did used to occasionally, not for one of these campaigns, but I did used to occasionally knock things on the head for a little while to perhaps prove something to myself or to my loved ones. Go, look, it's easy. Knock booze on the head. Didn't drink all last week. Just goes to show it's easy for me. I've got complete control over it. Now I'll start drinking again. More often than not, after a period of abstinence, I'd binge more heavily, almost as a reward. I'm sure that's a cycle that many of you will be familiar with. In the end, I realised that cutting down wasn't an option and knocking it on the head was. And I haven't looked back for what it's worth. Mind you, if you haven't got a problem with drinking, carry on. Go for your life, I say. I remember it being a hell of a lot of fun, but I've done enough of it now. Anyway, if you do want to stop drinking, smoking, or any other little bad habits that you feel, could improve your life if you knocked them on the head, how do you go about it? Are there any tips, techniques, shortcuts, or methods that might help you do all of that stuff? That's what we want to find out this afternoon. And by the way, if you have any of those of your own, drop them to me at Delaney Man or at Talk Radio on Twitter. But I'm joined now by someone who might be able to help. Darren Marks is an experienced hypnotherapist in London who's launched apps to help you shed some pounds, quit cigarettes, and more. Hello, Darren.
Hi there, Sam. How you doing?
All right. Thanks for joining us. What are the kind of addictions that you can help with?
Well, I see people for all kinds of things like, alcohol is very common. Stopping smoking is very common. Sometimes other, substances, but it's mostly alcohol and cigarettes. And eating food is obviously also, that's a big deal for a lot of people. But a lot of it always comes down, I find, to, anxiety, really. People are overindulging in those habits to make themselves feel better. That's often what it's about.
Yeah, I think you're right. But it never occurred to me until long after I stopped drinking that could have been the reason. I always thought I drank just because it was a laugh, and I didn't think there was anything more deep-rooted than that. But Russell Brand's got this new book out based on the 12 steps that people practice in Alcoholics Anonymous, which was not something that I did to give up drinking, but I was interested. Anyway, I picked up the book partly because I just think Russell Brand's a great writer, and he's done his own interpretation of them. And it was really interesting to me because he explains how the 12 steps of recovery are very much based on the fact that all of us have a lot of anxiety and fear, deep-rooted and based on experiences that we might have had in our youth, big or small. They don't always have to be big dramatic things. It might have just been someone being a bit rude to you at school or what have you that you carry around with you. And that the habits of whether it be drink or drugs or fags or eating, or in some cases just things like shopping, or things to do with relationships. They're things that we do to sort of distract ourselves from painful memories. And this was a real revelation to me. In fact, I thought, I do believe that, but I'm not really sure if I've got the stomach to confront it all.
Yeah, that's what I do every day in my office, is help people to let go of those negative thoughts and feelings, which have been holding them back in life, and that they might have been using habits like alcohol or cigarettes to distract them, as you say, which is an excellent way of describing it. One of my clients once described smoking to me as poisonous yoga. And I really liked the description, because what she meant was it was a way for her to step away from the stress of her life for a moment, to take a deep breath, to relax. And often people, they have these habits, whether it's, if someone's comfort eating, they're not eating or smoking. It's very rare for me to see someone who's trying to commit slow suicide by smoking or drinking. Usually, as people are doing these habits in order to make themselves feel better because they're feeling insecure, anxious in some way. So my preferred method of helping people is always to work with those underlying reasons as to why they might feel like that in the first place. And then it actually becomes really straightforward to stop a habit like smoking or drinking. I mean, you're talking about addictions, and you also use the word giving up. I tend to avoid the word giving up in my practice because giving up implies that you're losing something of value. Whereas actually, when people stop smoking, they're stopping doing something that is potentially really damaging to them. Drinking, again, I mean, it's like, I suppose most things, including smoking and drinking, if you can do them in moderation, they're not really a problem. If someone could smoke once a month, it wouldn't really matter, would it? And the same with drinking. If you can drink in a way that doesn't actually, do you any harm, then that's not a problem. It's only when people
a lot of people struggle to identify the difference. So when I tell people that I gave up drinking, they ask me a number of questions that are almost always designed to establish whether or not I think that they should give up drinking. It's like everyone's trying to think, is the amount I drink problematic, or is it normal? Can I control it? Is it an addiction, or is it just something that I enjoy and is harmless?
I think you just hit the nail on the head. So can I control it? And it's that feeling of being out of control that you can't stop it. I can't stop it. That's when you know that you've got a problem. If you can control it, then it's not a problem because you know I've had enough, and you stop. And most of the time when I see people for drinking issues, they might say, I want to stop drinking. But at the end of it, what they really want is to be able to be in control of it. And they're very grateful when they find a way, actually, they can go out and have, enjoy a drink at a social occasion, but they don't have to do it all the time. They can be in control of it, and they can stop when they've had enough. And I think that's a really empowering thing. But for some people, obviously, it's better to stop completely. And certainly with smoking, I think that's generally the sort of thing that people stop completely, whereas drinking is something that people can learn to manage. Most of us can learn to manage, but it depends on the individual, obviously.
So tell me a little bit about the techniques that you can use in hypnotherapy that help.
So, I mean, the very basis of it is similar to meditation. So learning how to relax in a natural way is in itself of great value to many people. So let's say if someone was drinking because they were feeling really anxious about going to some social occasion or because they've got a big speech the next day or whatever it might be, if you're already feeling quite relaxed because you've been practicing relaxation, that in itself is going to be part of it. The other aspect to it is imagining yourself in a situation, handling it the way that you'd like to. I mean, this is used by all sports people as well, this kind of creative visualization, imagining yourself as a success. And the opposite can also be true. So if you imagine yourself being really stressed out unless you have a drink or not being able to handle the situation, that in itself can make you really, anxious. So imagining the situation going well, imagining yourself handling things in a really positive way, that's a really big part of it. But perhaps in my day-to-day practice when I'm working with clients, the most important thing is letting go of underlying negative thoughts and negative feelings. And if there's one phrase which comes up more than anything else that I think it's almost like an epidemic in this country, is the feeling of not being good enough. It's a feeling of insecurity that people are not enough within themselves. And that's often why they turn to things like food, drink, alcohol, drugs, in order to make themselves feel better, to get away from this feeling of inadequacy. But when you're feeling confident and strong and balanced within yourself, and you're not worried about whether or not everybody doesn't have to like you, because that doesn't really matter because you're feeling strong and confident in yourself, then it's much, much easier to take control of things like alcohol and drugs and so on.
It's interesting because when people say, "Oh, how did you give up alcohol?" I say, "Oh, I just stopped." I mean, you're not saying it was a very easy thing. I'm not sort of being flash. You just stop. But some people, the sort of people who have been through AA or other sorts of therapy, say, "Oh, you white knuckle it." And when you talk, I realise what they mean by that. Because I mean, rather than address perhaps some of the reasons that I was drinking booze, I just sort of disciplined myself to simply stop drinking booze. And in actual fact, there are deeper things for everyone than that need to be addressed. You can't just do it in that sort of well, you can, because I have, but what you're saying is there is more to it that can be investigated.
I think that often those sorts of habits are like the tip of the iceberg. They're not actually the real problem.
Yeah,
it's almost
they're a symptom.
They're a symptom of the problem. When you deal with, it's quite often when I work with people for, I remember someone coming to see me for stopping because they had a fear of driving, and they really needed a job where they needed to be able to drive. I helped them with the driving, and then afterwards they said, "Well, actually, I know I didn't come to you about this, but I don't have a fear of dogs anymore. And by the way, I've stopped smoking because I realised once I've taken control of that one thing, I realised I could control other parts of my life."
And presumably people use that sort of hypnotherapy alongside other forms of therapy and treatment and so forth.
They can do. I mean, it's a standalone treatment on its own, and obviously it's not going to be necessarily the right thing for every person. When it is the right thing, it tends to work really quickly. I liken it a little bit to walking down a road, in that people can take many years to walk down that road, but it only takes a moment to turn the corner. And I see my work as facilitating that turning of the corner. So sometimes it can seem almost miraculous, but it's miraculous because people are ready to make the change. I can't make people do things they don't really want to do. But if you're really desperate and you really want to stop, or you really want to change how you think about things, and you want to take your life to the next level, then the tools that I'm using can facilitate that, can accelerate that. But it's not about me doing something to those people. It's about us working together.
Darren Marks, really fascinating stuff. Thank you ever so much for joining us this afternoon.
Been a pleasure.
Darren Marks there, experienced hypnotherapist in London who's launched those apps to help you shed pounds, quit cigarettes, quit more. Really interesting stuff about the deeper meaning behind our bad habits. That might be of help to you if you are planning on knocking something on the head, whether that be binge eating, chocolate, fags, booze or something else for October. Then have a little think about that. Perhaps one of those apps might help you out. You are listening to Live at Drive. I'm Sam Delaney, with you through till 7. Don't go anywhere just yet.
Across the UK, online and on DAB.
We are Talk.
Talk Radio. Give it some lip.